too much?
I don't know, and I mean it's tough to say it. I think
So it was more to control emotions. It's a surprise for everybody, except maybe to me.
Carlos Alcaraz is returning to Cincinnati with greater uncertainty than his entry confirms. Alcaraz arrives, Samuel Lopez takes command, Jannik Sinner controls the standard. That makes Alcaraz's new team faces its biggest test more than a comeback angle. The easy explanation points toward a healed wrist and a champion collecting matches before New York. Yet 4 months away cannot be erased by announcement, while Ferrero's absence removes the man who spent 7 years reading Carlos. Alcaraz once called him just one member missing. Then he won Australia and Doha, making that declaration look fearless. The season later cracked in Barcelona. Sinner took number 1, won their Monte Carlo final, and kept moving while Carlos missed Roland Garros and Wimbledon. Now, what happens in Cincinnati could expose something victories concealed. Lopez knows the system, but familiarity alone differs from controlling a joyful champion who may chase the spectacular point before his wrist accepts the demand. Ferrero was absent when Carlos won here last year. He was still waiting beyond that tournament. This time, nobody waits. Tell me honestly, does this comeback make you confident or nervous? Subscribe for the facts behind the pressure. Now let us examine which absence actually matters. The absence that matters is not the empty seat television cameras will find inside Alcaraz's box. It is the missing judgment that used to come from that seat. Samuel Lopez knows the forehand, the movement patterns, and the habits developed during practice. His harder assignment involves recognizing when Carlos needs freedom and when freedom has become a danger. Lopez did not arrive after the breakup carrying a fresh notebook and unfamiliar ideas. He joined Alcaraz's staff in late 2024, working beside Ferrero throughout a remarkable 2025 season. That campaign produced 8 titles, 2 major championships, and the year-end #1 ranking. Both coaches received the ATP Coach of the Year award. Calling Lopez inexperienced would ignore his direct involvement in that success. His promotion still changed the structure. Advice carries a different weight when another coach makes the final call. Lopez previously shared the responsibility with a former world #1 who had known Alcaraz since the player was 15. After Ferrero left, every major judgment eventually stopped with Lopez. That context gives Alcaraz's one member missing, quote, its strange power. The words were meant to show continuity. His fitness staff remained. His medical support stayed in place. His brother Alvaro gained a more prominent role, while Lopez already understood the daily routine. Carlos was explaining why he did not feel surrounded by strangers. Fans heard something sharper. One member had helped turn a gifted teenager from Murcia into a champion on every surface. Ferrero understood how Alcaraz reacted after losses, how quickly confidence could become impatience, and how much pressure the young star hid behind his smile. Reducing that history to one missing person sounded cold when separated from the full answer. The breakup itself gave social media enough material to create a conflict. Alcaraz thanked Ferrero for their journey. Ferrero offered support, although one sentence refused to disappear. He wished he could have continued. Reports later connected the separation to disagreements over a proposed contract. Ferrero discussed receiving limited time to accept terms containing conditions he could not approve. Those facts do not prove that Alcaraz personally forced out an unwanted coach. They show that the ending was not as clean as the original public language suggested. Ferrero wanted the professional relationship to continue under acceptable terms. The agreement required to make that happen never arrived. Then fans examined Instagram. Ferrero had unfollowed Alcaraz and other people connected with the team. A button on a phone suddenly became evidence in a case that tennis supporters had already decided to investigate. Some called Ferrero bitter. Others accused Carlos and his family of pushing away the person responsible for his career. The online verdict arrived before either side explained the action. Ferrero eventually said he needed distance. Seeing Alcaraz whenever he opened Instagram made emotional separation harder. He denied acting from spite and continued speaking respectfully about the player. That explanation changed the meaning without removing the sadness. A coach who had spent 7 seasons beside Carlos could not immediately watch the next chapter appear across his screen. The human loss mattered, but professional sport demands results before emotions receive much sympathy. Alcaraz entered 2026 with Samuel Lopez leading the team and an obvious target waiting in Melbourne. The Australian Open was the only major missing from his collection. Failure there would have invited immediate questions about Ferrero. Carlos answered with the strongest possible result. He reached the semifinal without losing a set, then survived a brutal 5-set battle against Alexander Zverev. Physical trouble entered that match after Alcaraz had taken control, creating the kind of crisis that supposedly required Ferrero's guidance. Carlos recovered his energy and found enough clarity to win the deciding set. Novak Djokovic waited in the final. Melbourne had always belonged to Djokovic in a way that made every challenger feel temporary. Alcaraz lost the opening set, adjusted under pressure, and won in 4. The victory completed his career Grand Slam, making him the youngest man to achieve that collection. Lopez stood inside the winning box. That image should have ended the easy version of the Ferrero argument. Alcaraz had faced history, physical distress, and Djokovic without his former coach. He had not collapsed tactically. His emotional control had survived. The new hierarchy delivered the largest title available. Doha strengthened the case. Alcaraz claimed another trophy and began the season without a defeat. His public confidence no longer sounded like an attempt to hide uncertainty. Results supported it. Lopez appeared capable of maintaining the system while allowing the player to develop beyond Ferrero's control. The first warning arrived at Indian Wells. Daniil Medvedev ended Alcaraz's perfect start to the season in the semifinal. One loss did not create a crisis, especially after 16 consecutive victories. It did interrupt the belief that Melbourne had solved every question. Miami added discomfort when Sebastian Corda defeated him in the 3rd round. Alcaraz could still produce brilliant periods, yet his control no longer looked automatic. The season had shifted from proof toward examination. Sinner was moving in the opposite direction. The Italian's core identity came from control. His power appeared clean because very little movement was wasted. Alcaraz could turn a broken rally into theater. Sinner preferred to remove the disorder before it developed. That contrast made their rivalry larger than a collection of results. Sinner captured Indian Wells and Miami, placing direct pressure on the ranking. Alcaraz entered Monte Carlo defending the title and carrying thousands of points from his dominant 2025 clay season. Sinner arrived with an opportunity to gain ground because he had fewer points to protect. They reached the final with number 1 attached to the result. Alcaraz described the occasion as a dream setting, but Sinner controlled the match and took the trophy. During the ceremony, Carlos praised what his rival had achieved. The respect was genuine. The message underneath it was uncomfortable. Sinner had taken the ranking. For the first time during the Lopez era, Alcaraz was no longer defending only his independence from Ferrero. He was chasing an opponent who had discovered another level. Australia proved that Carlos could create history without his former coach. Monte Carlo showed that his rival would not pause while the new arrangement settled. Barcelona then changed the argument completely. Alcaraz required treatment during his opening match because of discomfort around his forearm and wrist. He completed the victory, but the next decision mattered more than the score. Continuing might have protected ranking points and satisfied a home crowd. Withdrawal protected the player. The team chose withdrawal. That decision deserves credit because Alcaraz's natural instinct points toward competition. Joy does not always tell an athlete when to stop. A champion can interpret pain as another opponent that should be beaten. Lopez and the medical staff had to separate courage from unnecessary risk. However, leaving Barcelona did not end the problem. The wrist refused to fit inside a quick recovery schedule. Madrid disappeared first. Rome followed. Roland Garros became impossible, removing Alcaraz from the defense of a major title. Wimbledon created an even greater emotional cost. Carlos had built part of his celebrity on center court, winning consecutive titles there before Sinner defeated him in the 2025 final. Missing the 2026 tournament meant surrendering his chance to answer that loss. Each withdrawal changed how the coaching decision would eventually be judged. Returning too early could damage the wrist and threaten the US Open. Waiting longer allowed Sinner to build an advantage that might become difficult to reverse. This was the crisis hidden by the Australian Open trophy. Lopez had already proved that he could coach Alcaraz through victory. Injury demanded a different form of authority. The right decision could make the team look passive in the short term. A wrong decision might affect the player's future. Ferrero had handled injuries, scheduling debates, and emotional exhaustion during their 7 years together. His value could not be measured only through tactical instructions from the box. He knew the personal language required when Carlos wanted to play, and his body needed patience. Lopez possessed experience within the same environment, but he had never carried this exact responsibility as the permanent head coach. Cincinnati would not expose whether he understood tennis. It could expose whether Carlos accepted his authority when desire collided with medical caution. The months away changed Alcaraz's position before he struck another competitive ball. Sinner defended Wimbledon, remained number 1, and strengthened his claim as the tour's controlling player. Zverev also moved above Carlos in the rankings, pushing the Spaniard to number 3. That fall did not reflect declining ability, it reflected absence. Rankings do not preserve a champion's position because his injury deserves sympathy. Points disappear, other players advance, and the tour continues creating new images without him. Sinner became the face placed at the center of those images. He had won every Masters 1000 tournament played during the first half of the season. His second Wimbledon title confirmed that the momentum went beyond favorable draws or temporary form. Alcaraz watched the established king emerge from a rivalry he had often controlled. He still held a winning overall record against Sinner, yet their recent direction favored the Italian. Sinner won the 2025 ATP Finals Championship match, then defeated Carlos again in Monte Carlo. That created the emotional setting for the Cincinnati announcement. Before the entry became public, every comeback date remained movable. Fan pages posted training clips and offered confident medical conclusions. A video showing Alcaraz practicing with his non-dominant hand drew attention during rehabilitation. Supporters searched each frame for evidence that his normal forehand had returned. The official entry changed the conversation. August now contained a target. Cincinnati organizers were preparing for their defending champion, while fans could imagine another meeting with Sinner. Social media treated the confirmation as a return certificate. Excited posts declared that the king was coming back. Some accounts claimed that the wrist had completely healed, using a tournament commitment as support. An entry cannot prove competitive recovery. Practice creates controlled stress. Tournament tennis asks the wrist to manage unpredictable pace, defensive stretches, and repeated serving across several days. It also demands recovery after the adrenaline disappears. Cincinnati will supply those answers quickly because the conditions rarely allow a gentle return. Heat can shorten recovery. Fast, hard courts reward early contact, while opponents attack any hesitation. A player protecting one side of his body changes his movement even when the pain remains invisible. The serve should offer the first useful signal. Alcaraz needs his wrist through acceleration, contact, and follow-through. Reduced speed would not automatically confirm pain because he could choose safer placement. A repeated reluctance to attack second serves would carry more meaning. His forehand provides another test. Carlos creates heavy force by combining the wrist with violent rotation through the rest of his body. During a comeback, the dangerous moment might not arrive on a comfortable ball. It can appear when he reaches late and tries to create speed from an awkward position. That is where his identity complicates the plan. Alcaraz sees possibilities that other players reject. The crowd responds when he attempts them. Cincinnati spectators will welcome him as defending champion, increasing the temptation to announce his return through one impossible point. Lopez may need to ask for ordinary tennis. That request sounds simple until it reaches a player whose greatness depends on refusing ordinary choices. Too much caution can make Alcaraz predictable. Too much freedom could place unnecessary demand on the wrist. Ferrero spent years learning where that line moved during a match. Lopez must locate it under conditions he has never faced as the sole head coach. The comparison with last year can mislead viewers. Ferrero did not attend Cincinnati in 2025, leaving Lopez to guide Carlos through the event. Alcaraz reached the final and took the title after Sinner became ill. Alcaraz entered last year with competitive rhythm. His body had survived the summer schedule. Ferrero remained the overall coach and was expected to return for the US Open. Lopez carried tournament responsibility inside a structure that still belonged to both men. The final also ended after 23 minutes. Alcaraz led Sinner 5-0 when the Italian retired because of illness. Carlos deserved the trophy because he won every required match, but the final never tested their strategies across a complete contest. A healthy Sinner would present a far harder examination in 2026. He arrives with greater authority and a recent winning record over Carlos. Lopez would need to make independent changes against the player setting the current standard. Sinner's controlled aggression targets the exact uncertainty a recovering player wants to hide. He takes the ball early and reduces reaction time. If Carlos protects his wrist by shortening the follow-through or delaying commitment, Sinner can turn that hesitation into immediate pressure. Alcaraz might answer by using variety, changing height, and moving forward. Those choices would reduce some baseline exchanges, although they require sharp timing after a long absence. Drop shots become dangerous when used from poor positions. Net attacks fail when the approach lacks depth. The tactical battle therefore becomes human. Lopez can deliver the correct plan, but Carlos must trust it when the score tightens. Ferrero's old authority came partly from surviving earlier conflicts with the player. Their disagreements created history that gave later instructions weight. Lopez has shared experiences with Alcaraz, including the Australian Open triumph. Cincinnati asks whether that bond holds when the message becomes restrictive. Carlos may hear that he should avoid a particular shot, finish practice early, or accept that one victory provides enough preparation before New York. The US Open makes every decision heavier. Alcaraz is the defending champion, and New York offers far more than ranking points. It provides an opportunity to confront Sinner on the surface, where both can control the sport's direction. A long Cincinnati run could rebuild confidence. It could also leave Alcaraz with little recovery time before the major. An early defeat might protect his body while creating doubts around his level. Neither outcome can be understood through the result alone. Sinner carries his own global weight, but his current power comes from competitive certainty. He remained on court while Carlos disappeared. Every trophy made the absence feel longer. That is why the rivalry must remain at the center of Cincinnati. Alcaraz is not simply checking his wrist against an early opponent. He is measuring the distance created while Sinner occupied the season. The established king now belongs to Italy. The hungry challenger happens to be a 7-time major champion from Spain. Their reverse positions give the comeback its edge. Cincinnati may reveal that Alcaraz requires more time. Such a result would not prove that Ferrero could have prevented the injury or accelerated recovery. It would show that Lopez inherited a problem without an easy solution. The tournament may instead reveal that the team managed the layoff correctly. Carlos could return with free movement, controlled aggression, and enough patience to survive difficult moments. That would strengthen Lopez's authority more than another routine title. Ferrero's influence will remain inside either outcome. Lopez learned beside him, while Alcaraz developed under his standards. Coaching partnerships leave habits behind after the person leaves the box. The permanent absence becomes visible when those habits stop answering a new question. Ferrero cannot intervene after a painful forehand. He cannot study Carlos overnight and change the next practice. He cannot decide that the US Open matters more than another Cincinnati round. Lopez can. That is the responsibility being tested. Carlos will still smile if the forehand lands. He will search for the drop shot that makes the crowd rise. His joy will not disappear because caution entered the conversation. That instinct defines him too deeply. Lopez must preserve that identity while preventing it from controlling the comeback. Success might look less spectacular than fans expect. It could mean accepting a shorter run, refusing an unnecessary risk, or leaving Ohio healthy enough to defend New York. Sinner waits as the measurement. His position gives every Alcaraz result context, even if they never meet. Carlos must prove that 4 months away did not turn a rivalry into a chase he cannot close. Ferrero's empty seat will attract cameras because absence is easy to photograph. The harder change exists in the decisions nobody sees. One voice has final authority now, and Cincinnati places that voice under its greatest pressure. If Lopez gets the balance right, the new team leaves with something more valuable than proof that it can win. It leaves with evidence that Alcaraz can survive uncertainty without returning to his old coach. If the balance fails, the questions will follow them into the US Open. Subscribe and tell me your honest verdict. Will Cincinnati confirm Samuel Lopez as the right leader, or finally show what Alcaraz lost when Ferrero walked away?